I know that you're probably impressed by my stack. Pizza stain and a G-Watt. What's up? I've never been deployed. Yet I'm a 15-year veteran of a war that I'm convinced is killing more Marines than combat in both Iraq and Afghanistan. The war that I'm fighting is not typically acknowledged, but it is leading to sexual assault and suicide. The current statistics in the Marine Corps suggest that combat actually has little, if any, influence on suicidal ideation. And I quote, in data compiled by the DoD on military suicides, between 2008 and 2011, more than half of service members who took their own lives had never been deployed to Iraq or Afghanistan. Yet, like any war, casualties are vast and varied. While some tragically take their own lives, others destroy the lives of countless other victims around them through sexual assault. For example, and I quote the Marine Corps Times, the 20-year-old's body was discovered in 2008, beaten and burned in a fire pit in the backyard of a fellow Marine. Corporal Lauderback, that Marine, was 8 months pregnant. That happened here in Jacksonville. Today, my purpose is to give personal insight and perspective on why suicide and sexual assault are undeniably linked, and why my personal battle with pornography addiction and sexual promiscuity has given me an on-the-ground understanding as to why porn and sexual deviance lead to suicide and sexual assault. I'm going to do this by first explaining to you what sexual addiction is, both through clinical research and study and through personal experience. Second, I'm going to explain to you what a steady diet of porn and sexually deviant experiences does to the human brain and body. And third, I hope to explain why understanding that these problems are at the heart of sexual assault and suicide, understanding that these are our issues, gives us hope of rediscovering the original intent of honor, courage, and commitment. Currently, a rifleman spends more time training on how to identify suicidal ideation and how to report sexual assault than that rifleman spends training on a rifle. It's the state of the Marine Corps. In my 2.5 years, I've been to the range 3 times, and yet I'm sure I've been to more sexual assault and suicide prevention briefs than I can count on both hands. That's called training loss. Currently, Marines kill more Marines than anyone else. Our enemies in Afghanistan cannot compete. And at the same time, there were over 970 unrestricted reports of sexual assault last year, including 71 forcible sodomies and 166 rapes. This number indicates something like an average of 3 sexual assaults occurring every day. But I'm not going to put on a video, and I'm not going to tell you that no means no. Trying to stop suicide by telling people how to identify suicidal people is literally putting a Band-Aid on a bullet wound. I'm not going to tell you out of one side of my mouth, no means no, and then glorify sexual deviance out of the other side of my mouth. That's just confusing. And that is, by the way, exactly what we've been doing. But why pornography? Why do I want to talk about pornography? 1 in every 4 searches on Google, 1 in every 4, that's 25% of what Google is used for, is a pornographic search. For children under the ages of 18, the top 2 most searched for words on Google are first sex and second porn. 35% of what's downloaded off of the internet worldwide is pornography. Think of that. Over a third of what the internet is used for worldwide is the consumption of pornography. Are there any parents, by show of hands, are there any parents in here of children older than 11? A handful of you guys. Well, statistically, your child already has a relationship with pornography, because statistically, in America, the average 11-year-old has already started consuming pornography regularly. 11. This is why I want to talk about it. Because it stands to reason that everyone in this room has some kind of relationship with pornography. And that's exactly why we are going to talk about it. Do I have a porn problem? Lance Corporal Hicks. Yes, I do. I've spent countless hours, countless dollars and relationships lost, fixated on pornography. I've isolated myself from the world and worshiped myself through synthetic intimacy. This self-worship has led me to exclude myself from social life. I've despised most relationships because of either a lack of control on my part or a lack of perfection on the other person's part. It has led me to believe things about women and about myself and about reality that simply are not true. In my own battle, what I've discovered is that I am not alone. In fact, after giving this brief 2 times now prior to today, it's become very obvious to me and to my command, and to your command for that matter, that a lot of Marines can benefit from this information. So good afternoon, Marines. My name is Lance Corporal Hicks, and it is an honor to be speaking to HMHT 302 today. Thank you. So I have a problem with pornography. Do you have a problem with pornography? Well, the American Psychiatric Association categorizes porn addiction as follows. 1, tolerance and a growing need for more porn. 2, withdrawal. 3, porn sessions last longer than you had ever intended. 4, quitting attempts are often unsuccessful. And 5th and most importantly, important social, occupational, or recreational activities are given up to watch porn. Okay. Well, these criteria fit my experience with porn to a T. I needed more. I didn't like staying away from it. I spent more time than I intended doing it. I failed to quit despite countless attempts. And most importantly, I gave up important social, occupational, and recreational activities so that I could look at porn. I can't tell you how many times I turned down my buddy to go grill out at his house because, quite frankly, I just wanted to sit in my room, veg out, and look at some porn. Does that sound familiar? Yeah, but what is so bad about that anyway? Yeah, okay, maybe that stuff categorizes me, but who cares? Why is it so bad that my relationship with porn is this constant, that I rely on it so much, and that the American Psychiatric Association considers me a porn addict? Why does that matter? Well, Dr. Bill Struthers is a biopsychologist who writes a book called Wired for Intimacy, How Porn Hijacks the Male Brain. And in his book, he explains scientifically what happens to our minds and bodies with repeated use of pornography. What I'm about to do next is I'm about to explain scientifically and physiologically really quickly what pornography does to your mind and what it does to your body, and consequently, your existence. And I'm going to be reading from Dr. Struthers, who is heavily supported by countless medical journals. And I quote, "Mirror neurons are a set of brain cells found in specific parts of the brain, notably the inferior and frontal gyrus and inferior parietal lobe. These neurons were thought to be only involved in the production of a behavior, but they are more than that. They are also involved in the same perception of that behavior. The motor system cells that activate when you see a behavior, if you see someone grab a bottle of water, the neurons that would correspond to that person grabbing a bottle of water are activated in you as well. Originally, these were called monkey see, monkey do neurons because they were discovered in monkeys. When we see an activity, we silently mirror it in our cortex." End quote. What does that even mean? Any UFC fans? No one likes UFC? Okay, well, I like UFC. Any Steeler fans? Okay, a couple. All right, well. 2 years ago or 3 years ago, when the Steelers are in the Super Bowl and Santonio Holmes is in the back of the end zone with 2 feet in the corner catching the ball that wins the Super Bowl, you as a Steelers fan or as someone who doesn't like the Steelers is sitting there not inactive. You are moving. You're tense. In a lot of situations I can see myself, he's going for it and I'm doing something like that. Like, I'm in a living room. There are no footballs there. But I am mirroring what I see in my cortex. I am mirroring what I see. Last week, Shogun fought, who did he fight? Chael Sonnen. I'm a huge UFC fan. Chael Sonnen's like my favorite fighter. He's just an old dude who he just whoops ass. And he got a hold of Shogun and he's given it to Shogun. And every time he's doing it, I'm sitting next to my wife at my friend's house, and he's doing it, and I'm like, I'm punching something. I'm not really punching anything, but I am. You see what I'm saying? I'm participating in what I'm viewing. Why, though, does that matter? How does that come to bear? And I quote, "Viewing a pornographic movie creates a neurological experience whereby a person can vicariously participate in what he is watching. As a man watches, he can neurologically identify with the performers in the video and place himself into the HD signal. To deal with the arousal it creates, the male brain mirrors and heightens the arousal, causing even more sexual tension," end quote. The reason that we all say that we look at porn is because we're trying to satisfy some sexual tension, right? I mean, we're just trying to take care of me, take care of what I need. What Dr. Struthers is saying is that's not true. What he's saying is what you're actually doing is you're creating more sexual tension in your body. More sexual tension that is being created through your mirror neurons that now has to be dealt with. You now have to deal with this. You cannot go on living without dealing with the sexual tension. And I quote, "The body produces natural or endogenous opiates involved in pain relief and reinforcement. Artificial drugs like heroin cause euphoria and reduce pain distress. This may be why many men describe the physiological, psychological, and emotional aspects of orgasm as release. The ejaculatory release of semen occurs in concert with opiate activation." Okay, get over it. I said ejaculatory release of semen. But did you hear what else I said? I said that in concert with that taking place in your body, you are literally releasing a heroin-like substance. Your body produces endogenous, an opiate. We have the ability to release a heroin-like substance into our bloodstream. Dr. Struthers explains further. The movement toward orgasm in men is accompanied by an increased state of anxiety. But this elevation is shut off as a result of the opiate released with ejaculation. The opiate's activation resulting from ejaculation increases the amount of dopamine released and shuts down the fear centers of the brain. This adds significance and pleasure to the euphoria and removal of all fear, end quote. The first time I read that, I read it like 7 times, and here's why. Shuts down the fear centers of the brain and adds pleasure to the euphoria and removal of all fear. Why would I not just want to live in an orgasm, right? Euphoria and transcendence from fear. Is there anything else that you have control over that can get you that way? Transcendent from fear. Powerful. Very powerful, I would say. But why wouldn't we just want to do this all the time? Why aren't we just masturbating all the time and trying to and just staying in an orgasm as long as we can? Well, I would submit to you that given these statistics, we kind of are. That's sort of where we've become, where we've come to as a society with this porn consumption. And it's certainly where I came and where I am trying to leave. So why don't we just want to stay in an orgasm? And I quote, "The male mind is not meant to achieve this orgasmic high on demand. Considerable neurological work goes into preparing a brain for an endogenous release of opiates. It is designed to be preceded by the priming of dopamine, norepinephrine, and testosterone." If you haven't heard anything that I've said, listen to these next 2 sentences. However, repeated activation of opiate receptors, such as with heroin addiction, results in tolerance. With repeating acting out, as well as with drug use, the absence of the opiate activation results in craving the drug or sexual release and diminishes the euphoria of everyday life. Diminishes the euphoria of everyday life. Do you know what that means? That means that my porn addiction turns me into something like a heroin addict. Now, simple tasks, waking up and going to work, answering to NCOs I don't particularly like, or doing jobs I don't particularly like. The euphoria is more diminished in those activities because I am used to on-demand pleasure and satisfaction, on-demand transcendence from fear. Dr. Struthers finishes up by saying, "This is why the coupling of pornography with masturbation is so significant in the development of porn problems and ultimately steals joy from relationships." Listen, I'm not saying that orgasms are wrong. That's not what I'm saying at all, so don't hear that. What I'm saying, and what Dr. Struthers is saying, is that the use of porn to achieve on-demand orgasms turns you into something like a heroin addict, except that you don't have the physical track marks of a heroin addict, but getting out of it, out of the addictive cycle, trust me, is just as bad. So here's what's wrong with repeated use of pornography. The joy of relationships and the euphoria of everyday life are diminished. Marines, this is a recipe for despair, isolation, and suicidal ideation. It's a recipe for it. All right, wait, weren't we going to talk about sexual assault, and could we just stop talking about porn for a while? This is really awkward. Okay, you're right. We are going to talk about we're going to talk about sexual assault. The reason why I wanted to hit so hard on pornography and why I'm continuing to do that in these briefs is that given the statistical fact that everyone in here is dealing with some type of relationship with pornography, I believe that porn is one of the main culprits. It's got to be the main culprit in driving this me, my sexual desires, my impulses must be fed. It's driving this culture, so that's why I'm driving it home here. And that's why personally I wanted to know the science behind it. Why is it so powerful? Let's talk about sexual assault. Dr. Carnes is a member of the Academy of Healthcare Providers in the Addictive Disorders, and he writes a book called Out of the Shadows, Understanding Sexual Addictions. Now, Dr. Carnes is not just interested in pornography. In fact, only a very little part of his book is dedicated to it. He's more interested in discussing why, as a culture, we struggle so much with an addiction to high-risk sex. High-risk sex, sexual deviance, countless examples of pastors and business owners, all fathers, who find themselves doing things like molesting children or risking their entire lives for sex with a random. Dr. Carnes wants to know what is at the heart of these compulsions. He wants to know what drives your porn addiction, what drives rapists, child molesters, strip club aficionados, prostitute connoisseurs, and all of you plenty of fishermen. Also, I should point out, I am coming dreadfully close to the all-sacred and almighty God of my age, which is sexual independence. Don't you dare tell me who I can sleep with. Don't you dare. Don't you dare tell me who I can love. We're a progressive country. I can sleep with whoever I want to. I can do anything with my genitalia. I got rights. Yeah, you're right. You do. You have rights. We do live in a progressive society. And I can't tell you what is right or what is wrong. But I would like to take a brief look at another progressive society. I picked this one up, this article, out of a newspaper in Denmark. And I quote, "It's legal and it doesn't scare the horses, say customers, animal houses of ill repute. Is it just the latest alternate lifestyle? Denmark's animal bordellos, in which people pay for sex with horses and other beasts, are advertising on the internet and drawing customers from as far away as Norway, Germany, Holland, and Sweden. As long as no one gets hurt, including the animals, Denmark won't prosecute. Neither Denmark or Norway have any laws banning bestiality. The proprietors, and presumably the customers as well, have convinced themselves, and governments involved, that the animals are experienced and welcome the chance for an intimate interaction with another species." You have to laugh at some point, right? This is ridiculous. What, are we really talking about paying to sleep with a horse? Really? This is on the Hill? It's a political issue? It is. Because it's a burgeoning market. People paying for sex with horses. What I was going to do, what I'd like to try to do for everyone, for myself and for you all, is define sexual deviance. The problem is I cannot do that. See, Webster defines deviance as the fact or state of departing from usual or accepted standards, especially in the case of social or sexual instances. In other words, whatever is socially or sexually accepted is not deviant. Well, today what's usual or accepted is limitless. There are no bounds. We know no bounds. This doesn't mean, however, that this type of progressive thought is free. In the military, we are used to several social norms. One of them is that in fiscal year 2011, over 30,000 divorces were reported. But it's just normal. Everyone does it. It's usual. Does that make it right? Is my question to you, which I cannot answer for you. Because something is normal, is it okay? See, my sexually deviant lusts include lots of porn and did include, in some cases, sexual affairs with random women. And as Marines, that type of behavior is expected. Let me tell you this. As long as that type of behavior is expected in our Marine Corps, we don't have a shot. We don't have a chance. We are doomed. So sexual addiction in general, these compulsions that drive us to do sexually reprehensible things. Dr. Carnes tells us about the 4 phases. 1 is preoccupation. That's the trance or mood that completely overwhelms one to seek a sexual compulsion. It's thinking about something and coming into a trance where you know you want to do it. For me, it was almost always, I'm going to lock myself down and binge on some porn. 2, ritualization. What you do to prepare for your compulsive sexual behavior. In my case, it was like going to the barracks, locking the door, turning off my phone, closing the blinds, lights out, porn time. It's my ritual. 3rd is the compulsion. You're doing it, whatever it is. Whether your compulsion is to go to another Marine and tell that Marine, maybe it's a junior Marine, maybe it's a junior female Marine, and you really like telling junior female Marines about your sexual exploits, kind of gets you off. Maybe that's your compulsion. Maybe your compulsion is pornography. But the 3rd phase is compulsion, you're doing it. And the 4th phase and necessary phase is despair. Feelings of hopelessness, powerlessness, and isolation. Carnes follows this up by adding, and I quote, sexual addicts often report suicidal feelings along with despair and shame. Marines, in our porn generation, our reality is so blurred that we believe that we're sexually successful because of our porn relationship or our promiscuity. Do you get that? When you walk into the shop and hear Lance Corporal such and such or Gunny such and such talking about their sexual exploits in Thailand like it's some kind of medal of honor, what that person genuinely believes is that you'll respect them more for it. What Dr. Carnes and Dr. Struthers are saying to us is that that person is actually sick. Are we sick? As a Marine Corps, are we sick? Math for Marines. General Amos comes to my squadron and talks to us about the hot topics. I'm thinking Afghanistan, sequestration. No. He wanted to spend his whole time talking to us about sexual assault and suicide prevention. Those are the hot topics today. That's Marine Corps right now. The Marine Corps calls itself a force in readiness, expeditionary force. We're hard, right? How ironic to contemplate that we might be a bunch of self-medicated addicts. We aim more therapy right now than rifles. We are targeting therapy, not M16s. Carnes adds, the addict's lifestyle becomes a constant violation of his own values, compounding the shame. If you are struggling from some sort of sexual addiction or some sort of a sexually deviant lifestyle, which I am currently and will be for some time because I've invested so much into it, what you find out is that you are actually walking around in some sort of shame cloud. You are personally ashamed of yourself. You were raised with some sort of values, but you're walking around as a contradiction. This encourages a kind of self-hatred. In this hyper-sex and hyper-selfish porn culture we live in today, many of us participate and affirm, simply out of habit, things that our parents or grandparents, for that matter, would have been ashamed by. And it's time for some good old-fashioned, didn't your parents teach you better? Glorifying the things that we glorify. It should also be noted that while walking around in this cloud of shame that Dr. Carnes is talking about, that men who typically are emotionally immature to start with and can only find ways to emote through anger, might be driven to express their anger towards themselves by perpetrating some sort of aggravated assault, or maybe some sort of aggravated sexual assault. On Marines.mil right now today, you can go on there and look up as a Word document the courts-martials. There's about 220 some odd courts-martials that took place between January and July of this year. And if you were to just do a control F on those for certain words, what you would find is the constant theme in those courts-martials is aggravated sexual assault and child pornography. That's why we're courts-martialing Marines and sending them to the brig. Primarily aggravated assault and child porn. Very well. Here's some more interesting statistics. Dr. Carnes tells us that 42% of sexual addicts have additional chemical dependency. Do I need to say that one again? Additional chemical dependency? 87% of addicts have multiple addictions. 17% of addicts kill themselves. Do you guys think that the Marine Corps could have a problem with chemical dependency? Maybe? Maybe? When I was 19 years old, I was in college. I had to get a job. I went to work at Walmart unloading boxes. And every 2 hours on an 8-hour shift, our manager would come out and let us go smoke a cigarette. 4 cigarettes a day. Marines, if I told you that you could only have 4 cigarettes a day, you would scratch your mother-flipping eyeballs out. If we're not smoking a cigarette or throwing a dip in or pounding out some monsters, I mean, we wouldn't be a Marine Corps. Marines, this is a target indicator. Familiar with that term? It's a target indicator. We're self-medicators. I wish Friday would get here so I could get wasted. And Saturday. And Sunday. Yeah, Monday, all right. Maybe some chemical dependency issues can link into this. Our addictions to pornography and sexual promiscuity, coupled with our chemical dependency, is driving the Marine Corps toward isolation and self-hatred. They are also creating men and women who act too often out of a desire to satisfy their impulses. And this makes everyone a potential target of sexual abuse. If I can use you to feed my sexual appetite, so be it. And to hell with the consequences. What is the cure? Honor, courage, commitment. All too often we hear about doing the right thing when no one is looking. Yet we make ourselves and our Marine Corps liars when we do the wrong thing when everyone is looking. When you're speaking to a Marine, do you realize that you may be the closest thing to a father or mother or sister or brother that that Marine has? Would you congratulate your son or daughter for having sex with a random partner, a prostitute, or spending hours looking at pornography? Would you congratulate your child for that? Treat your Marines like family because they are your family. This is the intent of honor, courage, commitment. That rather than some idiot who can put on a uniform or fire a weapon, you would be a noble warrior who would put the interests of others before his or her own. Honor one another as Marines. It takes courage, great courage, to sacrifice your personal impulses and call out someone who is leading others astray. And you must be committed to one another more than you are to your fleshly lusts and wants and addictions. Does anyone in here, by show of hands, have a veteran grandparent? By show of hands. Almost the entire room. My grandfather, R.C. Hicks, was a junior sailor on a supply ship in the Pacific. And when he tells me stories about it was a small ship being tossed about by swells and waves. Granddad grew up in La Mesa, Texas. I mean, Granddad he worked in the dirt. He doesn't know about this ocean thing. And he would relate to me the great fear that he'd have when he thought the ship's going down, we're going down. Or maybe the more real fear of when a zero formation, Japanese zero formation, would fly over. And he wondered, was this the day that our supply ship would be hit? And is this my last day? It's real. Who has seen Band of Brothers? Right? It's like just the most excellent military movie that's ever, or collection of movies ever made. Well, in that series, Captain Winters, Major Winters, is talking to the camera about things that they'd experienced. He's seen all of these soldiers die in front of him and freeze to death and be killed all war long, up until the end. And as he's an old man, he's sitting there in front of the camera. And he says, my grandson asks me, Granddad, are you a hero? And I respond, no, but I've served with heroes. Marines, we're not in the Ardennes Forest and we're not in the Pacific Ocean right now. And currently what's killing more Marines is suicide and sexual assault. When my grandson asks me, you were a Marine, right, Granddad? Who was the enemy? I will say, the enemy was suicide and sexual assault. If he then says, well, did you fight? I will say, yes, I did. That's what I'm asking you to do today. 18 to 24-year-olds. I can't tell you if we're going to get the support that we need to change the culture in the Marine Corps. I can't tell you that. But here's what I can tell you. You can change the culture of the Marine Corps by showing one another and encouraging one another towards honor, courage, and commitment. Thank you very much.